The world has advanced in millions of ways in the last few years, with the introduction of AI, advancements in biotechnology, and so much more. However, the disabled face challenges every single day that inhibit them from growing as people and the world from growing as a human race. Did you know that according to the UN, only 6% of peace treaties in the last 30 years mention disability, indicating a dire need for global education and global effort towards this issue? In addition, 2/3 of employees with invisible disabilities such as diabetes, autism, and auditory disabilities say that they have to source support and reasonable adjustments at work alone. If these inclusion-related issues are fully addressed, the entire system will be more in sync and drive higher productivity and workplace satisfaction. This only highlights the urgency at which we need to approach this issue. Given the urgency, it is imperative that an intergenerational effort is advanced. Based on research, poverty can lead to disability rights, as disabled people are 6% more likely to be in poverty. This means that they have a lack of opportunities to share their issues and raise their problems to the change makers who are able to forge solutions. Disability rights can be a leading factor of poor and negative mental health, not only for those directly affected, but also for the friends and family of people with disabilities. This is because the lack of inclusivity within real life can be incredibly discouraging, alongside their disability. The founder herself drew from her own experience to set towards this path of impact. She had a classmate in primary school with autism, who luckily was given ample support in order to aid his education. This was only possible because of the facilities and opportunities that students at her school were provided. However, it is understood that this isn't available to every person with a disability worldwide. She had also fractured her spine due to a swimming injury and had to undergo physiotherapy for several weeks in order for her to be able to get back to the sport she loved. This, again, was only possible due to the availability of hospitals and clinics with physiotherapists in her region. However, globally, there is a lack of physiotherapists to stop an injury from turning into a lifelong issue. Delivering systemic improvements for the disabled community requires a holistic approach. To realize this, EmpowerABLE was created by a group of secondary school students. The initiative has developed the LIMITLESS framework, representing 9 steps to realize disabilities inclusion, which include the following: LIFT. Create a direct sense of empathy and equity for the disabled community. Ideate. Originate ways to advance more innovative research and development. Model. Create prototypes to solve specific and unique problems. Innovate. Design digital solutions increasing effectiveness of care. Transform. Initiate new programs offering inclusive personalized aid. Legitimize. Expand range of products covered by insurance policies. Establish. Formalize channels to receive financial aid for personalized support. Stimulate. Develop an interactive and multimedia hub for collective action. Sustain. Ensure continued focus and protection for the community. This framework enables youth globally to use it as a blueprint to advance inclusion in their local communities. Looking ahead, EmpowerABLE aims to continue scaling its influence through its network of partners, supporters, and advocates to educate and empower more youth to think, research, and act with a stronger inclusion lens. Help us recognize the fundamental rights of disabled individuals. To drive collective action, we welcome your participation to grow our shared platform. Welcome to the final episode of the EmpowerABLE videocast. I'm Sheraya Amarasekara, and thank you for joining us throughout this limitless journey. Together, we've explored how to understand barriers, develop solutions, build inclusive programs, and mobilize communities. Today, we reach the final letter, S, for sustain, where we focus on ensuring continued action, progress, and protection for the disabled community. Because meaningful inclusion can't be a temporary campaign. It must continue even when leaders change, funding shifts, or public attention moves elsewhere. To sustain is to make inclusion last. It means building structures that protect a project's purpose beyond one event, one team, or one generation of leaders. Sustainability requires more than keeping an organization active. It means ensuring that disabled people continue to hold leadership roles, programs remain accessible and adequately funded, policies are followed, progress is measured, safeguarding systems remain effective, new leaders are prepared, and the community can respond when barriers emerge. The previous 8 steps helped build change. Sustain asks the final question. How do we protect that change and ensure it continues to grow? Why does sustainability matter? Because projects often begin with energy and enthusiasm, but fade when founders graduate, volunteers leave, or funding ends. When that happens, community may lose services they had started to depend on. It can also create the impression that disability inclusion is a temporary theme, rather than a permanent responsibility. The United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy demonstrates the importance of combining commitments with accountability. Its framework uses benchmarks to assess progress, identify gaps, and accelerate change. The updated strategy also emphasizes areas including resource tracking, digital accessibility, co-creation with people with disabilities, and accessible safeguarding mechanisms. This shows that lasting inclusion requires clear responsibilities, resources, and ways to measure whether the promises are actually being fulfilled. Sustain is the final step because impact becomes meaningful only when it survives the moment in which it began. So what does it mean to sustain disability inclusion? It means strengthening 6 foundations: people, leadership, policy, funding, evidence, and protection. Sustainability can involve creating a permanent disability inclusion committee, adding accessibility responsibilities to schools or organizational policies, securing an annual budget, training new student leaders, publishing yearly progress reports, conducting regular accessibility audits, maintaining confidential reporting channels, and reviewing programs with disabled participants. Sustainability doesn't mean repeating the same activities forever. Needs, technologies, and communities change. A sustainable organization listens, adapts, and improves, whilst protecting its central commitment to equity. How can young people ensure that disability inclusion remains protected and prioritized over time? Here are 6 ways. 1. Make disabled leadership permanent. Representation shouldn't depend on whether one supportive leader happens to be present. Create formal positions for disabled students, advocates, or representatives within your organization's leadership structure. Ensure they can influence strategy, budgets, program design, communications, accessibility decisions, and evaluation. Provide different ways to participate, including remote attendance, flexible meeting formats, and accessible documents. Disabled people should not only be invited to describe problems, they should have the authority to help make decisions. 2. Embed inclusion into written policies and annual plans. Verbal promises can disappear when leadership changes. Put responsibilities into writing. A school, organization, or youth group could adopt policies requiring accessible events and communications, reasonable accommodations, consultation with disabled participants, regular accessibility reviews, inclusive recruitment, safeguarding procedures, and a defined response when barriers are reported. Add disability inclusion initiatives to the annual calendar rather than organizing them only when someone remembers. When inclusion is written into policy and planning, it becomes part of how the organization operates. 3. Create a strong succession system. A youth-led initiative must prepare for students to graduate or move on. Document key contacts, project procedures, partnership agreements, funding information, accessibility requirements, password management processes, previous campaign results, and lessons learned. Create role descriptions and train future leaders before current leaders leave. A shadowing system can allow younger members to observe meetings, help manage projects, and gradually assume responsibility. Success is not proven when a founder becomes indispensable. It is proven when work continues without depending entirely on one person. 4. Build long-term and diverse resources. Sustainable work requires time, knowledge, partnerships, and funding. Avoid relying on one donor, one platform, or one annual event. Build a mixture of recurring donations, institutional grants, school or community budgets, corporate partnerships, in-kind support, volunteer expertise, and shared resources from partner organizations. Create a reserve for essential costs and decide which activities must be protected if funding decreases. 5. Measure, report, and improve. Sustainability depends on knowing whether your work remains useful. Track outcomes such as accessibility barriers removed, people receiving support, participants trained, policies introduced, funds distributed, digital accessibility improvements, and levels of community satisfaction. Combine data with direct feedback from disabled participants. Publish an accessible annual impact report explaining what succeeded, what didn't, what resources were used, what the community requested, and what will change next year. Accountability does not weaken a movement. It helps the movement become more effective and trustworthy. 6. Protect the community and prepare for change. Sustaining inclusion also means protecting people from harm. Maintain clear safeguarding rules, confidential report channels, consent procedures, data protection practices, moderation policies, and a defined process for responding to discrimination. Prepare for unexpected disruptions. Could your program continue online if physical meetings became impossible? Are important resources backed up? Can people contact the organization through more than one platform? Is there another trained leader who can respond during an emergency? Review these systems regularly with people they are intended to protect. Sustainability means remaining dependable, not only when conditions are easy, but also when challenges arise. To sustain is to keep listening, adapting, and protecting. And it means refusing to allow disability inclusion to disappear when it's no longer the newest campaign or the most visible topic. Throughout this series, we've discovered what it truly means to be limitless. We lift through empathy. We ideate new possibilities. We model solutions. We innovate through technology. We transform ideas into programs. We legitimize solutions through formal recognition. We establish pathways to financial support. We stimulate collective action. And finally, we sustain the progress we've created. The Limitless framework isn't a checklist we complete once. It's a continuous cycle of listening, creating, evaluating, and improving. Thank you for joining EmpowerABLE on this journey. To join our movement and help build a future where disability inclusion is permanent rather than optional, scan the QR code on the screen or visit the link in the description. When every person has the opportunity to participate, contribute, and thrive, our collective potential becomes truly limitless.